I think we took the London, when people had been bombed out and they needed somewhere new to come to, we were one of the towns, because being home counties and only 40 miles away, this is when we changed. And everything changed.
Because really you're a country girl at heart, aren't you?
Oh, too true, yeah.
And your father was a farmer?
My father was a farmer,
so
yeah.
So you grew up in the countryside?
I grew up we had a farm with wood behind, and like Rosemary and Margaret talk about primroses and cowslips and little wood, and you name it, we had it. And it was really good. It was really good. And we crossed 2 fields. We weren't on a main road. We were across 2 fields to get to anywhere accessible. So it was really in the sticks.
So I take it you met Gerald when you were working in Aylesbury?
Yes. When I got headhunted, you didn't call it that in those days, but this happened. And removed from the borough surveyor to the county planning office, where Gerald was, you see. And then when we married, well, I left the county offices and I went to work. I did a year in Stoke Mandeville in the old hospital when the spinal unit was on the right-hand side and we were on the left-hand bit, and all the nurses' homes and the doctors' quarters. And the spinal fellows used to have their archery practice outside along the drive, Nobody got impaled, so they could have been good. And then I did a year there, and because there was I lived in Limes Avenue, and to cycle to Stoke Mandeville 6 days a week, because we worked on Saturdays in those days, was getting a bit much, particularly as my parents had moved to Great Horwood. And I used to go over there on Saturdays, and then Sundays John and I went to his parents in Chelfants and Giles, you see, villages again.
Yes, very nice.
And so really, and also while I was still at school, I used to go to Great Horwood at weekends to an uncle's farm. So I haven't really moved very far away from my cows.
But also, Jean, I know from being in the village that you did an awful lot for lots of other people and never ever made a fuss or anything. You just got on with it, like Mrs. Riley.
Well, yes, Mrs. Riley more or less adopted us, you see. When Mr. Riley died, and I think she sort of gave up and decided she was an old lady, and Mary Peeler, who lived next door, she and I used to go across and do things. She moved downstairs, so Chris and Gerald moved her bed down into the sitting room, which was your room. Didn't Jerry drop the floor?
Yes.
A lot. So it was, you can imagine, it was... And I used to go across in the morning, on winter mornings, with this ghost there, and open the back door. I never quite knew whether she was still with us or not. I didn't like that very much. But she had this sister, Maudie, who bought one of the bungalows down Weston Lane. Maudie had a little car. Now my mother had an Austin 7 before the war, and it was that sort of it wasn't an Austin because I knew Austin, but it was that ilk. And she was a bit of an erratic driver, so she sort of bucketed into your bay, which Mrs. Riley said totally belonged to her. Anyway, she used to come, and they were sisters, so they often fell out, and often you would find that I was telephonist between, telephone down Weston Lane and telephone across the road. And because her garden stretched right down to where Trevor and Diana live now, Gerald and Chris were invited to grow vegetables there if they'd like to, so great, that was fine. Chris originally had an allotment down West End when that was still going. So he dug one patch and Gerald dug the other, and the kids milled about and I mowed the lawn. It was really, Mrs. Townsend would occasionally speak. Dr. Townsend we hardly ever saw him at all. Mary and Tim and Jane, of course, were with the young crowd. And Alex Monteith, yes, he more or less adopted us at one stage, and his wife was very, very nice to us. She wore yellow socks, which Janet and I thought was very dashing in those days. I mean, you didn't see yellow socks, sorry. Bad habit. So it was fun. And, of course, Esmond Knight and Nora Swinburne round the corner. Mm-hmm. And he used to ride a bicycle in tight jeans and a slouch hat. And I think he painted, I seem to remember. I seem to remember him stopping by the chestnut tree, sketching.
Right. And what about Pathacres? Who lived there?
Sir Henry Jones, who was chairman of the Gas Board, known locally as Jones the Gas. And he was very nice. Now, he used to let us, about a couple of occasions, I think, church fete was held in his Pathacres grounds, and his big tithe barn. We had a big exhibition for something, I can't remember what it was for now, but that was open to the public, and that was great. Otherwise, the church fete before the village hall was built, and the playing field on Moan, the church fete was held, I think, before we got here. The old rector had it in the old rectory grounds, but in the 60s, 70s onwards, in the manor house, you know, where Noel Edmonds was, and it was some very wet summers I spent under their dripping chestnut trees.
Can you just tell me, the old rectory was Scott's house, wasn't it?
Yeah, the Gilbert Scott house, yeah. Mm-hmm. Which I thought was the ugliest house there was, but I understand it's a prime, it's a, I thought it was so ugly. I thought it looked like a prison block. You could see it through the trees going down the church walk,